Emmanuel.
Travis Wingezo. So, how many of you who've been following me for at least several months, back before the World War III against Israel on October 7th, or who have been recently joined and are independently looking up as many videos as you can? How many of you then went and watched Bill Maher's episode last night? Or if you don't have HBO, you saw his YouTube clips, like I did, his new rules. And then you went, oh my God, Travis was right. It is crucial to know the correct history and the chronological history of events, of people, of cultures, of various lands around the world. Because if you get errors, then people are justified in committing abominations. And even though Bill Maher said what I've already said to you guys in videos, he did have some incompletenesses, some errors, and so I made some pictures to correct them for him. And thus this video. But there's some fun stuff that is corrupted. And so let's go over some of it for you. First Nephi chapter 19. We are told from the beginning of the Book of Mormon, it is in the learning of the Jews. And so you pull out your history knowledge or your reference books, and you find out that the Jews lived pre-Christianity and pre-Islam. Kind of important to your eternal salvation. And so any biblical scripture, which are all of them, and even many that were rejected by the Christians, are written by Jews. And so it is abominable, and yes, anti-Semitic, to claim Christian interpretation upon the pre-Christian authors who were Jews. It's just horrendous for a new religion to be creatio ex nihilo under Roman Emperor Constantine to claim that the Jewish scriptures are now his Christian scriptures. They're now literal history instead of prophecies of the Jewish Christ for a latter-day time period, of which it's encoded in the stories the dates for the latter days. Now under Constantine, it's all disappeared as literal history during the Roman period specifically. And the other records written during the Roman period by the Jews are also Roman or literal histories for the particular time period that the various Jewish authors were messianically writing and creating a new Christ that had never existed before, but now all of a sudden he's there in the Jewish scriptures as the Jewish Christ, but he's Christian now, not Jewish. And so the Jewish authors are wrong and need to be corrected by Roman Emperor Constantine. And because nobody could agree on the nature and character of this newly created Christ, whose name they chose out of the myriad numbers of names to be Jesus instead of Emmanuel, which is the name of the Jewish Christ, Constantine had to create a whole new word. It does not exist in Greek. Constantine made it all up. Because he made it all up, the nature and character is, made up. Not real. And yet Christians have been fighting with the sword to defend their newfound Christian belief. And so, then you get Islam. He calls it Arab, and it's correct. Muhammad was an Arab, but formed Islam. And so it's all intertwined in one. You have Muslim, which is the culture, Islam, which is the religion, and then depending on where a person lives who's an Islamic Muslim, depends on the nationality. So you have Palestinians, you have Gazans, West Bank, you have Saudi Arabians, you have Qatarans. Trying to recall my geography now. Afghanis, Pakistanis, etc., etc., etc. And so, that's not until 600 when Muhammad started it. And then the Arab conquests, the Islamic conquest, the Mohammedan conquests, were shortly thereafter. And that's when the Dome of the Rock was built on the ruins of the Jerusalem temple. He didn't indicate the Dome of the Rock. He just indicated that Islam had taken over the Christian holy centers, specifically talking about Bethlehem. And so you have in 1 Nephi chapter 19, verse 10, an explanation of how the Bible by the Jewish authors was composed. You have an explanation, 1 Nephi 19, so this would still be Nephi, right? It's not Jacob talking here. I'm wanting to go back to Matthew chapter 2, so I'm not able to go up and see who the author is. But regardless, I think it is because the angel is talking here, so I think that's to Nephi. But it says, "And the God of our fathers, who were led out of Egypt, out of bondage, and who were preserved in the wilderness by him." So, according to the author of the Exodus book, the book of Exodus, because that's where that comes from. And it's repeated in the law of the Jews in Deuteronomy, and there's some discussion of it in Leviticus and in Numbers. And so the Jews have traditionally called all 5 books the books of Moses, even though they're all separate books written by different authors. The God of Abraham and of Isaac and the God of Jacob, which is different than the God of Abraham and Isaac. yieldeth himself according to the words of the angel. Also Malachi, but he's referring to the angel that's speaking with him. As a man into the hands of wicked men. So that's the angelic prophecy, the Malachi prophecy. Malachi, angel, messenger. To be lifted up according to the words of Enoch. The prophet Enoch prophesied that the Christ of the Jews would be lifted up. Okay? To be crucified according to the words of Nahum. The prophet Nahum prophesies that the Jewish Christ will be crucified. To be buried in a sepulcher according to the words of Zenos. See how this is being done here? And you say, well, the author of Matthew says it's Jesus. No. This is pre-Constantine. No Christian interpretation is allowed here. These are actually prophecies that contain the dates of the latter days. And these authors of the stories of Scripture are taking the prophecies, which these are all Egyptian prophets, by the way, are assembling them together to tell a story narrative, but it's a prophecy combo of the latter days. That's what the books of the Gospels are all about. They are all the various prophecies that they've found, and to fill in the gaps, they may be adding in their own extra prophecies. And they're telling a story with the collection of all of these prophecies from Isaiah, Jeremiah as some examples that we know of. But yes, like I said, Egyptians, they are the source of all the prophecies of the book of the Bible. And so I've found that Book of Mormon passage. I found the documents. I found the Egyptian sources. And my Elders Quorum president, whom I told that to in West Valley, was shocked. He was speechless, literally. He just stood there, eyes wide open, and stared at me. Couldn't say anything. He was stunned. If you're going to have a preconceived judgment of me, that's what happens. I confound you. And so, in Matthew chapter 2, the wise men come to King Herod in this story. And they say, we have seen his star in the east, and we are come to worship him, the Jewish Christ. It's not the Roman period. It's the latter days. They give us the dates. And so, for example, verse 1, this is the date of his start of his ministry, the start of the latter days. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king. There's the date and the location on earth where it is to be had. But if you're using Christian interpretation to turn this into literal history, the prophecies are gone. They're erased from your mind. You cannot see them. You can't see me. Cena. And so Herod, he's troubled, because this is the king who's going to take back the throne that belongs to his father, whom he had murdered. Osiris is the Egyptian king who was murdered by his brother Set, and then the son of Osiris comes back to Egypt after having to flee into the wilderness with his mother, who immaculately conceived him, and take back the throne of his father from his uncle. That's where that comes from. And so Herod in the story then says he gathers all of the chief priests and scribes of the Jews, demands, where is it that he will be born? Well, you just found out. Verse 1. But yeah, he does have an actual birth, because the Jewish Christ is a human being with human being parents, both a mommy and a daddy. No immaculate conception. The immaculate conception has to do with the date for the start of his ministry. 23rd September. Ooh, should I give it to you, or should I make you search my videos to find it? Yeah, if you're brand new, there's a whole ton of explanation that needs to be given to you because you're brand new. I've got over 3.3K videos on this channel alone. And it was close to 4,000, I think, on the TWG channel. And so, yeah, that's closing in on 10 terabytes of files, of videos. Terabytes, not gigabytes. That's a lot. And so, these chief priests and scribes searched the prophecies, because they weren't combined into one book. They had to go through the various scrolls to try to find it. And so then they said, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet. And the people who did the footnotes, Bruce R. McConkie, put it way down in verse 6, footnote C, comes from Micah. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. So why the Matthew author didn't want to say Micah, I don't know. But he didn't want to put Isaiah in here either. In chapter 1, for the name. But nonetheless. And so thus he continues to go on, inserting prophecy after prophecy in the order of the narrative that he wants it to be. Changes the names, and changes or gets the prophecies in an order to tell a narrative with. That's how the scriptures were written. And the Book of Mormon teaches that in the passage that I read to you. 1 Nephi 19, was it? Verse 10, if I remember correctly. And so, Bethlehem is first discovered in an Amarna document from around 1400 BCE. It was a letter of the king or tribal chieftain, whatever you want to call him, because it doesn't matter if he's a king or just a tribal chieftain, because he has to give tribute now to Egypt. Egypt rules this land. It is Egypt's land. And again, put things in chronological sequence for the accurate historical information. And then you'll see where Wikipedia goes wrong here. Because William F. Albright is wrong. But they're trying to claim that the name Bethlehem is Akkadian and not Egyptian, or shall we say Phoenician, because William F. Albright, dumbass, thinks that Phoenician is Akkadian, Mesopotamian. Dear God, the whole thing, not a single thing was right. All I did was fact check them, and all of it was wrong. Dear God. And then I find out that it was Sir Alan Gardner who says, yeah, make it all up, create an acronym theory to be part of the creatio ex nihilo for it. And bada book, bada boom, the whole world is under darkness because of this. And so, yes, unless you've found out that I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, you won't know the errors in Wikipedia. And so the Akkadians got their language from the Egyptians. Again, chronological historical timeline. Do not correct it, because it doesn't need to be corrected. It happened, and it's up to us to get it right. And so do not impose falsehoods, whether it be of your religion or of dumbass so-called scholars. And so you need to look to the Paleo-Hebrew Egyptian for the meaning of the name. But we won't get into that. Just understand that that is a big, huge error right here. And so it is known to be there was a having to skim over it to figure out what's going on. Yeah, he's trying to claim that it's an Akkadian deity as the temple of that Akkadian deity, the house of bread, or the Ahamu was a major figure in some variants of Mesopotamian cosmology, the feminine counterpart of Lamu, without the A. But yeah, that's fine for Akkadian, but not for an Egyptian land, city. And so the person who was writing to Amenhotep III is a man by the name of Abdi Heba. They don't have his cuneiform wording, well, per se. I prefer to see the Hebrew. But he's using cuneiform script on a tablet, and the person who put this in Wikipedia is claiming that it's now called Jerusalem, which is very interesting because it would mean that Jerusalem has been changed at this period of time under Amenhotep III, or after Tawut Moshe. I don't want to use the Paleo-Hebrew transliteration. Shh, it's a secret. David Moses is. And so that is very extremely interesting, because it means that he's talking to him about Jerusalem, which Bethlehem is just right up above, and he's complaining about the Apiru, who were mercenaries going around, and yeah, there's errors into thinking they were the Hebrews. And so for the timeline, you have David Moses IV, who during his tenure had to go up and deal with the Hittites, who were encroaching into northern Israel, northern Canaan, and had met Pharaoh's army, Tawut Moshe IV, there in the valley of Megiddo, Har Megiddo, which Har is actually mountain rather than valley. But in order to have a valley, you have to have mountains. And so the fight commenced. And in the middle of the fight, Tawut Moshe IV went on vacation. Left the soldiers behind, took a vacation, went to the mountain of Salem. It was called Salem back then. That's why I don't know if that's an error or if that is the name change that took place because of the visit by Tawut Moshe IV. King David Moses. And so, yes, the story of David and Bathsheba, but no temple. There was no temple on Salem. And so for a chieftain now, Abdi Heba, to be in now Jerusalem, which again, they're wrong about the Akkadian meaning. No, mine is correct, that I've shown you in videos recently. Because of Nelson botching the translation. And so Amenhotep is his son. Solomon. Thus, under Solomon, the temple now of new name Jerusalem is being built, with Abdi Heba as the first tributary king of Jerusalem. But he's not in the book of Chronicles or Kings. You sure? This is what the Jews are digging up all of Israel for, to find proof that King David and King Solomon are literal history people. And yes, those stories are prophecies of the latter-day Christ of the Jews, of the authors who wrote those books, but is referring to this beginning of King David, who is David Moses IV, who goes to Salem for vacation, and his son Solomon. And so David is rejected from building the temple from the biblical author because he was a bloody man. Armageddon. And so his son built the temple, but it was Amenhotep III. He's of Egypt. But yes, Canaan is all part of the Egyptian land. And so don't start thinking that this is all literal history true, the Bible is now proven correct, and we've now... No. The author is using these guys to tell his story about the latter days. But the King's List is correct if you put these guys in as the King David and King Solomon. Nobody else can tell you this. Definitely not William Foxwell Albright. God. And so, yeah. Yeah, he's trying to claim that Salem comes from Shalom, an Akkadian deity, which is Venus, Lucifer. Oh, dear God. Oh, dear God. But interestingly, the name in Egyptian of Jerusalem contains the three peaks for land, two owls, which I'm curious as to why they didn't combine them together, why they had the owls separated, because there is a glyph for the two owls back to back. And then the vulture, that means a tributary of Egypt, because the kingdom was in the lower part of Egypt, Karnak, with the symbol of the vulture. And then you have the swampland for the northern Egypt, where the delta is. And then you have the Chek, which if you read the story of the Exodus, when they get out of Egypt, they're complaining about manna, and so then they get little baby chicks. And then another interesting one is what is there it is, F40 in the sign list of Gardner. It is the backbone and spinal cords, and it's of an animal, and so it would most likely be of the ox, I'm guessing. Cow, ox, yeah. But I guess other similar shaped animals would also have that. And what's interesting is that they recognized the translation of this, even though it's the learning of the Greeks' language of the Egyptians, not the learning of the Egyptians' language of the Egyptians. That needs to be corrected for Gardner. And it means to be long, length, extend, and so a continuation, an extent of happiness for the land of Egypt, and thus the concept of the welfare of the nation, Egypt, the welfare of Zion, an extension of Egypt, welfare of Zion. Anybody familiar with Article of Faith number 10? I think we're done with this now. And so yes, Joseph Smith. is saying that the New Jerusalem is not going to be in Jerusalem. That Dome of the Rock, doesn't matter. It should be destroyed, but doesn't matter. The New Jerusalem will not be in Jerusalem. Sorry, Jews. It is to be in southern Illinois. According to the prophets, which originated from the Egyptians. And Joseph Smith knew this and told us, prophesied to us. It's in the Book of Mormon. It's in Joseph Smith's works. But again, who put the blinders of Christianity on us? Brigham Young. And so Mormons don't see it. Just as it was a bombshell that I just gave you for the origin of David and Solomon. And so this is the sad reality that Mormons are not coming to grips with, because Joseph Smith was murdered and his religion usurped, and Joseph Smith likewise prophesied that the Christ would be a Mormon and would come in the latter days. So let's first go to the Book of Mormon. Second Nephi, chapter 3, verse 5. So the learning of the Jewish author who had to rewrite the 116 pages is using Joseph repeatedly to talk about Joseph, who would be named after his father as well as Joseph of Egypt. I wonder who that author in the learning of the Jews is who would write about Joseph, son of Joseph. And so he says, Joseph of Egypt truly saw our day. Seer. And he obtained a promise of the Lord that out of the fruit, it's technically out of the seed of his loins, but seed grows up into fruit. The Lord God would raise up a righteous branch unto the house of Israel. That's the Jewish Christ, also called Messiah. Joseph Smith is the Christ, the Messiah of Mormons, founding the church. That's what it means right here. Book of Mormon, learning of the Jews, no Christian. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, in the law of the Jews. That is the prophecy of the Jewish Christ. And here it is in the Book of Mormon, and they're saying it's Joseph Smith Jr. But not the Messiah from Deuteronomy, but a branch which was to be broken off, nevertheless, to be remembered in the covenants of the Lord. So just like Joseph is the Messiah of the author of Genesis, because it ends with him, then the author of the book of Exodus says, I'm taking the Genesis author's character, Joseph, and he is, through his fruit of his loins, which technically is Jacob's, Israel's, through Judah and Pharez, son of Tamar, would produce King David. Moses. And so after Joseph comes Moses. So after Joseph Smith Jr. comes who? Not the Roman period, Jesus. That the Messiah should be made manifest unto who? The people of Joseph Smith's religion, Mormons, in the latter days. And there's Hanukkah. We just finished Hanukkah on Friday. Yesterday. Bringing them out of darkness unto light. Yea, out of hidden darkness and out of captivity unto freedom. The Jewish author of the Book of Mormon, who had to rewrite the 116 pages because Martin Harris stole them when Joseph III died. And then that mean old Methodist preacher said, Joseph, you're a glass looker. We don't want your kind in our town and in our church. Take your wife and her family and leave to go to the other Harmony in Susquehanna River. Yeah, you're missing out on a lot when you don't put the chronological, historical evidence together into the correct timeline. And so, in case you're confused that this can't be the interpretation, it has to be Jesus somehow, Section 103 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verse 16. When Mormons pollute the land of Utah, Judah by phonetically the same. If Mormons pollute Utah, and yeah, you are. The rash is severe this year, this winter time. Behold, I say unto you the redemption of Zion, the restoring of Joseph Smith's church from the great and abominable church of Set, which in Paleo Hebrew, phonetic or transliterated into Paleo Hebrew, is King Set, which is Satan, which is wrongly translated as adversary. Incomplete, more, let's say. It is King Set, who murdered Osiris. Satan, who we also call Lucifer. And so did that author of the rewritten 116 pages by putting in the Latin Vulgate version of Isaiah, talking about, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of Venus, the morning star. Do I need to go over with you yet again the baby name meaning of Russell Marion? These guys are awesome. It's just unbelievable. But Mormons, they got the Jesus blinders on. You can't see them. Should that be the theme song in the description below? You can't see me. Dear God. You might as well, because we've set it up for that, didn't we? Theme. Okay. I prefer Triple H or even Demolition. Anybody remember them? And so, therefore, I will raise up. There he is, the Jewish Christ, who's after Joseph Smith, unto Mormons a man with mortal human parents who would be sealed in the temple of angels. Did you not catch that from the prophecies? And conceive the son Ammon for Mormons, who shall lead them like as Moses. For Mormons are the children of Israel. He's now translating or interpreting the prophecies for you here. You are now supposed to put your place in the position of the house of Israel in the prophecies. And so Judah is Utah. Both ways. It's amazing. Because the church didn't want Utah. They rushed to have it Deseret, but they were slow. That other heathen got to Congress first and had it named Utah Territory. And then Utah instead of Deseret. Which, top of the mountains. From Egypt. It's where this all comes from. And this is awesome. And because of Mormon blinders, Mormons hate me. They don't believe. It can't be true. Nelson, Lucifer, baby name meaning, has to be true. Jesus has to be real. And so you become a weapon, just like Islam, just like Christianity. You become anti-Semitic. And you are vessels of wrath and hate, regardless of whether you can control your feelings or not. And you send me insults. You tell me I'm the liar. You tell me I'm an antichrist. Tell me I'm anti-Mormon. When you are the one who betrayed Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon. When you deny the prophecies of your Christ. And the prophets of the living prophet of Lucifer. They're fooling you. They're building the palace for Jesus. They're at Temple Square, leading you on that this is it. Not at all. So, there you have it. If only you knew who I am. Took off the blinders. Took off the Mormon goggles of Christianity. Bear goggles, you've never heard of that? You're drunk, just not with alcohol. Drunk with Christianity, non-Trinitarian. So there you have it. So let it be said, so let it be written, so let it be done.